Luke Evans is a DEA agent whose personal connection to a case becomes all the more complicated in Weekend in Taipei. Having first found success on the stage with a variety of West End productions, Evans quickly rose to stardom on screen with supporting roles in the Clash of the Titans remake and Ridley Scott's Robin Hood, as well as Immortals, The Raven and Peter Jackson's Hobbit trilogy. More recently, Evans has found further success starring in the live-action Beauty and the Beast remake as Gaston, the Fast and the Furious franchise as Owen Shaw and Nine Perfect Strangers, among other titles. Evans stars in Weekend in Taipei as John Lawler, a Drug Enforcement Administration agent who has been on the trail of drug cartel boss Kwong for the better part of 13 years, often to the chagrin of his bosses. When an operation goes awry and John's asked to take a vacation, he heads to Taipei in the hopes of putting the final nail in his case against Kwong, unknown to his supervisors. This, inadvertently, puts him on a collision course with Joey, a female transporter he fell in love with while working undercover, and leads to an emotional and fast-paced reunion for the two. Alongside Evans, the ensemble Weekend in Taipei cast includes Gui Lunmai as Joey, fellow Fast and Furious franchise vet Sung Kang as Kwong, Wyatt Yang, Tuo Tsunghua, Liu Yiqing and Patrick Lee. Featuring George Huang's return to the director's chair after a little over 20 years on a script from him and action icon Luc Besson, The Transporter, Taken, the movie proves to be an engaging mix of comedy and fast-paced thrills. Ahead of the movie's release, Screen Rant interviewed Luke Evans to discuss Weekend in Taipei, what drew him to want to star in the action thriller, how he related deeper to Lawler than many action characters, the challenge of working with the film's stunt team to choreograph the various fight sequences, and which he thinks will ultimately be the one audiences talk about the most. John Lawler is what attracted to Evans to Weekend in Taipei the most. He's made mistakes, but he's just getting through it like everybody else. Luke Evans, well, I like John Lawler. He's been around the houses a few times. He likes his job. His job is everything for him, he's a little jaded with life. I could relate to him. He's sort of an everyman, you know, and I wanted him to be relatable to everybody that watched it. And also, the way he fights, you know, there's no sort of professional way of throwing a punch. He just gets on with it and tries to survive another day in this dangerous business that he exists within. Chuckles. And I like the fact that there's a slight tongue-in-cheek humor that he has with everything he says. I got to play a very layered character that I just wanted to feel relatable to everybody that watched him. I sort of like the guy, he's made mistakes, but he's just getting through it like everybody else. I like playing characters that you can somehow relate to, and I try and bring that to each character. Some are easier than others, of course, but this one for sure, there's a lot of me in him, and I like that. Luke Evans, yeah, well, it required me arriving much earlier than everyone else to start shooting. I'd start rehearsing early because we worked with the French stunt coordinator that's worked on all of Luc Besson's movies. And if you know anything about Luc Besson movies, which I know you do, the stunt sequences are always very impressive and fast, and incorporate lots of different fight forms and art forms. So, yeah, we were in a room for 2-3 weeks before we started shooting, and he took me through my paces. We had a French team, and then we had a Taiwanese team of stunt guys with a translator who would translate between French, English and Chinese. So, there were a couple of days where it was like, this is intense. Because, also, we're throwing things at each other, we're hitting each other with wax, and there's flames, and there's 3 different languages in this room, and none of them know each other's language. So, it took a minute to get used to, but then we got into a routine and a rhythm, and there'd be a pause for translation to happen, and then we would just build on each piece every day. We built the kitchen in cardboard, and worked in an air-conditioned room from 9 to 5 every day for 3 weeks. Because obviously, there's not just one fight sequence, there's several. I also had to go back to my hotel and spend many hours on a treadmill learning how to run properly and fast for long periods. Because in the film, there's a huge sequence near the end of the film where I'm running through the streets of Taipei, and I'm not a runner. I don't like running. I've never liked running. I can't imagine anything worse. So, I had to force myself to somehow enjoy it and build up a resistance to stamina for being able to keep running in that heat. Because Taipei in the summer, we were there through June, July, August, it's extraordinarily hot. I think the costume designers gave up with the sweat on my back after the first take.